Prince Andrew's public life ends. The Duke of York has requested a leave from public service from his mother, the Queen, in an unprecedented move. Ex-royal cop Paul Page enters the spotlight with sworn statements, rare documents, and corroborating evidence that could reveal Prince Andrew's darkest secrets. When dates, meetings, and financial traces are revealed, the palace's silence breaks down. No sugarcoating. As allies scramble and denials fray, velvet corridors echo with revelation. As the nation watches and institutions prepare for fallout, one question remains. How far will this scandal spread? Find out. Storm behind palace doors. It usually starts whispering. Former royal palace employees tell quiet stories. Royalty is more complicated than its polished image for the cameras. Prince Andrew's closest associates describe him as wild, entitled, and unruly, making even his protectors uneasy. Guarding him was difficult for the police. Keep him safe from outside threats was their job. They were stressed by the man they were protecting. Andrew was reportedly difficult and demeaning to staff. He shouted, swore, and called names easily, sometimes prompted by minor delays or inconveniences. His behavior was criticized, but who could tell the Queen? In a hierarchical system, most knew better. Instead of upsetting things, silence seemed safer than honesty. Extreme entitlement was described. Guards remember Andrew acting like the palace was there to please him. His unpredictable rages were speculated to indicate deeper struggles, but they were never confirmed. Tension from his presence was certain. Staff were never sure if a routine task would result in harsh words. Many remember his behavior at the heavy anti-terror barriers outside palace grounds. These high-security gates took seconds to lower. Andrew, often driving his own car, would speed toward them. Without the barrier lowered quickly, he would explode in anger and roll down his window to yell at officers, saying they're useless, sometimes harshly. Irony stings those who risk their lives to protect him. Some joke darkly about what might happen if the barrier didn't lower in time. The strange events went beyond the palace gates. Windsor security cameras caught a suspicious figure pacing in the Queen's corridor, the private passage outside Her Majesty's apartments. Officers rushed in. Imagine an intruder, only to find Andrew. He reacted sharply when approached. I'll go wherever I want in my house. Some were uneasy about the oddity as well as the rudeness. Why was he loitering outside his mother's rooms when she wasn't there? No explanation was given. Details like these make Andrew one of the most difficult royals to serve. The public knew him as the party prince, with tabloids covering his travels, parties, and wealthy friends. But those inside the palace saw him as a man who drained patience and used privilege to break rules. Some guards thought he lived without accountability. Time revealed this contrast between the magazine cover royal and the angry figure behind palace gates. Some say his actions reflected his character in a culture of silence. Staff had to endure in the monarchy, where duty and loyalty were valued. Few dared challenge him. How many protection officers would risk telling the Queen her son needed reigning? The stories lingered in shadows. Staff was humiliated by reckless driving at barriers, pacing in corridors, and sharp words. The memories painted Andrew as a powerful man who was shielded from consequences, not a misunderstood prince. Questions persist after whispers became louder. Was this arrogance, a byproduct of privilege unchecked, or a darker attitude that thrived because no one intervened? The daily accounts from those who saw him remind us that behind the palace's polished facade are human stories, and not all of them match the fairy tale. Who knows what Prince Andrew's teddy bears say about Windsor's tensions? Maintain screen connection. Teddy bears. Small rules. Major tensions at Windsor. Teddy bears were neatly lined up on the bed in a private order. A laminated photo in a drawer guides soft toys' precise placement. The picture may seem silly, almost childlike, but it revealed a more unsettling household where even the smallest mistake could cause a royal temper. The palace had a different rhythm on weekends when the Queen and Prince Philip went to Windsor and other royals stayed in their lodges. Security checked the family's private rooms. Security included panic buttons near beds, 24-hour officers outside apartments, and regular alarm tests. Yet these safety measures brought officers and staff into royal life's most private corners. Sometimes they had to protect and maintain a fragile household peace. An officer recalls entering Prince Andrew's apartment during a routine check. What he saw surprised him. A bed full of teddy bears. It looked oddly childish for a grown man's suite. A colleague pulled open a drawer and pulled out a laminated photo of the bears on the pillows in their exact order. The instructions were clear. Return them precisely, or the prince would attack the maids. The idea that stuffed toys could affect a grown man's mood may seem silly, but the staff took it seriously. That small photo became a symbol of control, dictating their work, speech, and movement. They saw it as coercion, not harmless eccentricity. One slip could lead to an angry outburst, but following the ritual prevented humiliation. Thus, palace life often became strange. Staff quickly realized demand was not equal. Some requests were based on security, comfort, or habit or control. Security officers were supposed to prioritize safety, wiring, panic buttons, and quick responses. However, when they had to warn maids about toy placement to prevent shouting, duty and emotional labor blurred. Outsiders see Windsor and Buckingham Palace as grand symbols of tradition. Their walls hide workplaces that are closely monitored, controlled, and full of unseen rituals. The officers quickly responded to alarms, swept corridors, and checked cameras for unexpected movement. Sometimes the filmed intruder was an outsider. Sometimes it was a senior royal awkwardly wandering where they shouldn't. Protocol required compliance, even if it conflicted with the figures they were supposed to serve. The laminated teddy bear card stands out. Was it just a quirky way to organize a room and avoid chaos? Was it darker, a control tool? Proof of smallness. Arbitrary rules can control those who follow them. In an absolute hierarchy, staff survival depended on anticipating moods, following rituals, and never asking why. Public perceptions of royal life include bright colors, state occasions, lavish parties, and affectionate nicknames. However, inside stories are more complicated. Behind the curtains were exhausted officers, small rituals, and unwritten rules. Externally, teddy bears may appear harmless eccentricity. To those who lived it, they represented entitlement, fast tempers, and a culture where speaking up could cost your job. Finally, such details show how power works in closed systems, not because they are scandalous. Crews did more than clean rooms and test alarms. They controlled moods, prevented outbursts, and rearranged toys to keep the house running smoothly. Without blame, who pays the price for peace when privilege shapes private spaces so strangely? What secret links the servants, dog, and untouchable favorite? Watch your screen to find out. The servants, dog, and untouchable favorite. Palace Life's Oddity. How everyday routines reveal extraordinary truths. Bendix, Prince Andrew's small cross-Jack Russell Terrier, is an example. A restless pet in the morning may make most people grumble during a quick walk. Andrew had to press a button to summon his valet at 2 or 3 a.m. and wait for him to walk through Windsor's gardens. To walk the dog, Paul, Andrew's valet, was with him for decades. Prince Andrew and Ghislaine Maxwell were having a private picnic. The prince's whims almost ruled his life as he packed his clothes, traveled with him, and lived in close quarters. Despite his long service, whispers say Paul hated him. The patrolling officers often saw Paul taking Bendix out and smoking quietly. He vented there. To serve someone for 20 or 30 years and still resent them is telling. He joked half-bitterly that he hoped Andrew would ski off a cliff when he went skiing. That remark may seem shocking, but those who saw the prince's behavior understood. Stories about his temper, arrogance, and disregard for others were common. Andrew's entitlement seemed limitless, from yelling at maids about teddy bears on his bed to yelling at protection officers for the slightest delay at palace gates. Some say it wasn't his fault. From childhood, he was allowed to do things other family members wouldn't. Palace staff often mutter the same reason. Rumor or fact, he was the queen's favorite. This refrain repeats. Being the favorite child meant limits weren't set when they should have been. One former officer suggested that if Prince Philip had been harsher, if he had literally stuffed a bar of soap into Andrew's mouth the first time he told a servant to shut up vulgarly, entitlement may not have taken root. Instead, he continued his privilege-fueled behavior into adulthood. Absence of consequences. Andrew was noticed for being distant from his siblings. Each of them had royal birthrights, but he was known for taking it further. He demanded obedience without respect, expecting loyalty. Ancient customs and invisible hierarchies shaped life behind the palace walls. Staff had to balance serving a difficult prince without showing discontent. People accepted insults, kept their heads down, and endured impossible expectations for years. Few dared challenge him because it risked their careers in a system where complaints often went nowhere. A grown man ranting about teddy bears is inappropriate. Or calling a valet at 2 a.m. for a dog walk is odd. It's childlike, but dark, leaving scars on those who endure it. What to make of this? Did a favorite son who never matured indulge? Did a palace system shield him from reality? Or was it a deep-seated entitlement that discipline could not change? Whatever the reason, these palace glimpses show how power and privilege can make ordinary routines extraordinary, and not always in a good way. They remind us that behind the gilded gates, the struggles are about people navigating the moods of those born untouchable. What secret hierarchy rules palace life, shaping everything behind closed doors? Keep watching. Inside, palace hierarchy is hidden. Few see the palace's hidden structure, but it controls everything. Royals and their staff live in a rigid class system. Former staff have called it a miniature kingdom within the monarchy, where privilege, loyalty, and silence are highly valued. This structure is topped by senior household figures, retired generals and colonels who seamlessly transition from military to ceremonial power, including the Queen's private secretary, the Lord Chamberlain. Advisors protect, organize, and gatekeep the monarchy, acting as its rib cage. They live with white-gloved silver service, French menus, and carefully managed privilege. Administrators and secretaries in senior royal offices make up the middle tier. Princess Anne's team, Prince Andrew's aides, and others handle endless correspondence and official planning. They like comfort, but not the top table's grandeur. The lowest rung is maids, footmen, and service staff. They don't have French menus or chandeliers in their canteens. There may be only a microwave and kettle. This quiet class division among staff reflects their hierarchy, a reminder that palace loyalty is based on rank. Personal loyalty is also important. These employees often start as teenagers and stay for decades, sometimes 50 years. For 50 years, the late Queen's ladies-in-waiting served her faithfully. Palace service is a lifestyle inside those walls. Problems start there. When loyalty is so strong, who questions a senior royal? Consider Prince Andrew. His arrogance, entitlement, and temper have long been rumored. Former protection officers say he barked at staff over minor issues and cursed when things didn't go his way. Several called his behavior coercive, designed to intimidate and control. Despite this, few held him accountable. Why? Because loyalty often beats challenge in palaces. When scandals linked him to Jeffrey Epstein years later, many asked, why didn't the police or protection officers know? Truth is more complicated. His royal guards were not friends. They were staff. They weren't invited to dinners or after-hours parties. Their job was to protect, not gossip. They may have noticed unusual patterns or small red flags, but putting them together would have taken hindsight and the willingness to speak out against a senior royal. Who would dare do that inside that palace? Those who voiced concerns often felt trapped. Keep your head down, don't rock the boat, and take it, said one officer. Even valid complaints risked being ignored or silenced. How many junior staff members would march to the Queen and say her son needed reining in? This loyalty and hierarchy-fueled silence allowed small eccentricities to grow into bigger issues. From room arrangement to royal car barrier lowering, every detail required patience and control. When Andrew showed unchecked entitlement, the imbalance widened. So maybe the Royal Intrigue is a system designed to protect, shield, and serve without question, not one prince's temper or behavior. A system where even the smallest employee, bound by duty and decades of service, feels too loyal or powerless to speak out. Rumors thrive in silence. Questions remain. The palace gates conceal the royal family's most secret secrets. I had been abused by a royal. But what happened to the nameless visitor? Could this alter everything? Follow us to learn. A nameless visitor. Gain could be Ghislaine, or Gain, depending on who you ask. She was more concerned with how her name was handled than its pronunciation. Every time she entered Buckingham Palace. According to security experts, she was no ordinary guest. She was a familiar figure, often visiting Prince Andrew, but her secrecy set her apart. Palace visitor rules were usually clear. Every arrival, from prominent statesmen to royal friends, was recorded in the main entrance appointments book. System was simple. The royal offices passed down names, which were neatly written in the ledger and confirmed at the gate. Even VIPs couldn't move freely without it. For obvious reasons, this system was vital. Since Buckingham Palace was a symbol of the monarchy, it attracted both the powerful and the unstable who claimed to have come to visit the Queen. A strange thing happened to Ghislaine Maxwell. Apparently, officers were told not to write her name in the appointments book. No written record, no official acknowledgement, just a quiet instruction to let her through when she visited the Duke of York. This discretion was unusual. Many wondered why the secrecy. Was it to avoid headlines, or to hide something the palace wanted to keep private? Maxwell was already tarnished by her father's legacy. Former media mogul Robert Maxwell died at sea in 1991 after falling from his yacht, leaving behind a pension fund scandal and a mystery. Ghislaine, glamorous and enigmatic, inherited his wealth and name whispers. Her presence in Buckingham Palace as a guest increased the intrigue. Jeffrey Epstein was the unavoidable connection. Even Jeffrey Epstein, a flesh-pleasing man. Before the world knew the full extent of his crimes, he and Maxwell were already well known in elite social circles. Their friendship has been one of Prince Andrew's most controversial public relationships. However, those inside the palace saw the story start with regular visits that staff were told to treat differently, even quietly. One security officer remembered Maxwell's first mention. The instruction was straightforward but striking. Keep her name out of the book. Nobody explained why. It wasn't necessary. The order stood out, distinguishing her from other visitors to those gates. It raised silent questions for staff used to order, routine, and accountability. What made this guest so untouchable that her visits were unwritten? Speculation has grown over time. Did it protect her privacy, prevent gossip, or show her and Andrew's closeness? The answers may never be known, but those who stood at the palace gates, flipping through pages of carefully logged names, ambassadors, dignitaries, family friends, and noticing one visitor's blank record, remember, her identity and careful management make the story fascinating. Her namelessness spoke louder than ink in a world where tradition and protocol govern nearly every detail. It left behind questions and a sense of a hidden royal chapter that still intrigues today. An ex-royal cop claims to have proof of Prince Andrew's darkest secrets. What do you think? Please share your ideas. Remember to like, share, and subscribe.